evening, folks. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. First and foremost, our sincerest apologies for those of you who went to the Randburg Bowling Club. We assume that there's one bowling club in Randburg, but they have the beauty of having two. This is the right one, Ferndale Bowling Club. So anyone who went there and came here, sorry about that, but we will hopefully atone tonight with the rigorous discussion we're about to have. BBK, have you had your cigarette? What's up? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So first and foremost, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight at the first, and we hope of many, for the FRUNxLimar Football Forum. Now, always when there's discussions around football, I'm sure you've seen these panels. I'm not going to name the exhibitions where it's just a bunch of talking heads and administrators, and you don't see the people who actually ingest and are part of this culture, the football culture, who are the public. So I think a big thank you to all of you who saw the signs on Twitter and all our social media and decided to come out tonight and support us and have a discussion that we're going to have here tonight. It's very important that this country acknowledges the people who participate in enjoying the sport from the comfort of their couches or by going to the stadium, but by just generally supporting South African football, whether it's at a national level or if it's at a league level. So today, I think we're in a very, very good position because we come from a weekend where Bafana Bafana have secured themselves a place at AFCON 2019 in Egypt. I shudder to think how this discussion would have gone had we not qualified. So I'm so glad that we have, because it means that we can have a positive discussion, because I think we can all see that maybe the development, maybe the success should have come a lot sooner, but it's starting to show signs of improvement, and I think that in itself is something that we must acknowledge. I want to say thank you so much to some of the stakeholders in the commercial side of football who've turned out here tonight also to see what this is about. People were thinking that this wasn't going to take place because we'd qualified, but it's for those reasons that we carried on with our mandate, and that was to engage the public. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. I want to take this moment now to introduce you to my esteemed panel. I am joined to my right by three gentlemen who have a lot of learnings and knowledge that is historic as far as their time and contribution to the South African footballing landscape. I want to start with the man to my immediate left, Thomas Teacake, a man who has over 35 years of experience. Thomas, what do you drink? What's your drink of choice? Apple juice. If you want to hear some amazing stories like we did for the first hour before this started, get him a apple juice, appetizer if you want to spoil him, and pick his brain, because he has some of the best stories and the best knowledge as far as the game is concerned. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Next to him, you'll clap for them collectively at the end as a team. Joining him is Veli Lemnyandu, a man that I've come to work with. Veli, you and I were on opposing sides for the longest time when I was still at SuperSport, and he was at the SABC, and it's like, you don't talk to those guys, just pay your TV license, that's all you have to do, keep him in a job. And so coming to know him over the past 2 months as a colleague on the FRUNxLimar Football Podcast, one that we do every Monday, I've learned, once again, a deep well of knowledge as far as football is concerned, not just here in South Africa, but on the continent as a whole. And then next to him is a man that I used to play back when my back was still behaving. We used to play football together, corporate, disclaimer, corporate football, so you don't need the high levels that this man at one stage in his life was known for. Kabelo Bosilong, thank you so much. The MD of Sports Sense, and once again, a contributor in a collective and administrative level as far as CAF is concerned to the game, both locally and in the rest of the continent. This is my panel, and I'm so glad to have them tonight, and I'm sure you are too, so please give them a round of applause. I think a good starting place would be just to set the scene for tonight. The discussion tonight is about our national structures. So if you came here with PSL gripes, I'm sorry. Fidel, are we doing refunds? I don't think we are. But tonight's discussion is around our national structures, whether it be the men's senior team, the women's senior team, and everything below them. So let's start maybe with TK and just recollect on the journey that you've seen South African football make from the time that you started paying attention to us. Obviously, readmission started with a bang. I mean, we got our first game in readmission, started with a win, and then it was a bit tough going. We didn't make 94, but by virtue of being a host in 96, we were AFCON champions later to be. And so I guess that's where the story kind of starts. And if anyone can tell us, it's you. So I'll open the floor to you for you to start in terms of your reflections of the past 25 odd years of our game.
Thank you, Kamza. How much do I have?
Let's cap it at about 5 minutes. Let's see.
Okay, I will try. I think I was privileged to have been involved in the writing of football, and for more than I care to remember. And I still remember long before 1992 when we were actually readmitted, a colleague of mine, Mark Gleason, told me that, you know what, soon and very soon, South Africa would be readmitted into FIFA. And it is best to start learning about African football now. I think that was 4 years before South Africa was readmitted. And we would, out of our own pockets, we would actually travel to Lesotho, to Botswana, to Mozambique, Swaziland to watch international games. And that's where I started to learn about African stars. And believe me, before readmission, I always said, the day South Africa is readmitted, we're going to clean the floor. They just don't know what they are missing. We're going to clean the floor. Little did I know that other countries have advanced so much, and we were playing in a cocoon among ourselves, and we were way, 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 way behind. And I'll tell you, in 92, when we were readmitted, I remember Jeff Butler, I don't want to go into details, before he could even take charge of the national team, he was dismissed, and Screamer Chabalala was appointed, and then we played that 3-match series against Cameroon. And after that, our first qualifier was against Zimbabwe in Harare. And I was in the traveling party to earn my 4th cap. Remember, Cameroon won, we beat them 1-0. That was my first cap. And then we played 2-2 in Cape Town. Then we lost, I think. No, we lost 2-1 in Cape Town, and we played 2-2 at FNB. That was my 3rd cap. And my 4th cap was in Harare, in Zimbabwe. I remember we arrived on a Monday, and the game was on a Sunday. So on on Friday, we went to training at the National Stadium where Zimbabwe were also training. So we found the Zimbabwean players training, and Spear Makoba was the Screamer's assistant or in the technical committee. And he looked at the Zimbabwe players. You know, they were wearing green shorts, black shirts, yellow, green, red, all colors of the rainbow. And Bafana were wearing their Kappa attire, you know, with bags, all of them identical and all that. And Makoba said, hey, when I'm at Lazan, Ozala, you are senior national team. And I said, yeah, it's them. He said, hi man, why and I tried to explain, but it went one ear and out the other. So Spear said to me, when I'm at Lazan, Upu Peter Ndlovu. And I pointed Peter Ndlovu, who was training alone, actually just running with the ball. And I said, that's him. He said, yes, we are Mfana Lo Peter lo mncane lo. Phela ngine DStv mina. Ngiyambona uPeter Ndlovu, hey ukhona man uqinile lo yamncane lo akusuye lo. You see the level of ignorance we had in those days about international football. And he went on to ask me, manje isidudla lesi sona siyadlala. And I said, that's their anchorman, Willard Khumalo. And he turned to Dr. Khumalo and said, Mdogis, mfana kithi uyilihlikihle nakaza kuwe ulihlikihle umshayishi bobo uyathola i-contract le phesha noma kanjani isidudla lesi angeke sukumake. It is now history that the same Willard Khumalo controlled the game and we got beaten 4-1. So in my 4th cap. And then we went to Nigeria, of course, and you all know it was very tough. It was difficult. I think that is when, as South Africans, we realized that football across the African continent has advanced so much while we were isolated here in South Africa. And partly that was one of the reasons why we started Soccer Africa, because we felt an average boy anywhere in the country can give you the lineup of Liverpool or Manchester United and ask him about Asante Kotoko, about Goma here, about Dynamos, about, Nkana Red Devils, Simba, Yanga. They don't know what you're talking about. It's like you are coming out of Mars, and hopefully Soccer Africa will try to play that little role in trying to educate our boys that there is much more of football than Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, and Sundowns. So it has been difficult, but after all those early years and the beatings, the 4-1s and all that, Clive Barker came in, and I think he stabilized the ship a little bit, and we went on to win the Africa Cup of Nations, largely because I think what people don't realize is that the 11 players that started in 1996, all of them played abroad. Andre Arense was playing in England, Sizwe Mutau in the late Sizwe, David Nyati, Lucas Radebe. Well, Mokoko was still playing for Kaizer Chiefs. And then Mark Fish was playing abroad. Eric Tinkler was playing abroad. Shoes Mushweu, Dr. Kumalo, Sean Bartlett, Helman Mkalel, all of them were playing abroad. And I think that is one of the reasons why we won the Africa Cup of Nations in 1996. And we still managed to qualify for the World Cup, and we went to the final of the 1998 Cup of Nations, where we lost 2-1 to Egypt. And then from there, it was downhill. And I think we have been unable ever since to find the reason why, what went wrong, what is it that we did right prior to 1996, and what is it that we are not doing right now? And I think that is one of the questions that we need to explore and find out, where did we off-ramp?
Yes, I think that's definitely one of the questions that we want to unpack here tonight, as really maybe we pick up on that and say, after that, what's been your reflections of what's happened? I mean, we'll unpack as to where it went wrong, but if someone had to discount prior to those World Cups and look at South African football on that national level between now and then, what would be the summary of that?
I think when you look in the first 10 years, that Teacake was talking about, 2 World Cup qualifications, 98, 2002, and you look at the AFCON, a gold medal in 1996, a silver medal in Burkina Faso, a bronze medal where BBK went, in Ghana, and Nigeria with Trot Muloto. And you look from that time, sometimes you find that what is good commercially will not be good in the field of play. Because history tells us that when the new broadcast deal came around 2006, that's when we started to see the struggle. That's when we started to struggle in terms of exporting good players to Europe. And you also look at 2002, I think we were knocked out in the quarterfinals. Carlos Queiroz, we bombed out in the group stages in Tunisia, couldn't score a single goal, didn't get a single point. In 2006, with Ted Dumitru, with Carlos Alberto Parreira, we also came back in the group stages in Ghana in 2008. I know Trompius was there as well. And then we didn't qualify for the next 2 AFCONs in 2010 when we were hosting the World Cup in Angola, and also in 2012 with Pitso Mosimane. Remember the issue of the rules? I was part of those who were dancing in Bombela. I have to admit, So when you look, as much as our football off the field, we've had all this glamorous progress commercially, but it was not delivering in the field of play. Now, these are things that will also need tacticians, and fortunately there are tacticians inside this room, to also unpack those things. One of the stats that I find astonishing for me, between 2004 and now, in the AFCON tournaments that we've qualified for, we've only won 2 games. Only 2 games. We last won a game in Tunisia, and we also won a game here against Angola in 2013 when we were hosting. So there is a link. There is a link, because if you can find that now, yesterday I was watching the under-23 game, and you find that some of the boys who are playing overseas are not boys who have gone through the system of being sold to those overseas teams. It's boys who went there through the academy system, being shipped out early, And also, one of the things that has been key is continental football, the Champions League. Because the last time also we were in the group stages, Orlando Pirates going all the way to the semi-finals, losing to Sfaxien, it was in 2006. Until Pirates again came back in 2013. So, not exporting, also not doing well at club level on continental football, there is a serious link. And if you can look now on how things are turning around slightly, you can see that we've had Sundowns that has been frequenting the lucrative group stages, playing against the big boys. Pirates is also joining that space. So our respect is coming. And even in also having in terms of the feeding system from the junior national team setup as well. From 2009 until 2014, we're struggling to qualify for any major competition, be it AFCON or even the World Cup. But from 2014 until now, we've been to AFCONs, we've been to World Cups, we've been to Olympics, but there's that serious link that is missing between the junior national teams and the senior national team.
Okay, thank you very much for those reflections. A lot to unpack then. We're going to do that throughout the evening. But maybe as we move it on to Kabelo, just looking at it from an administrative perspective, Veli speaks about the commercialization and the glorification of a product that in the end didn't really deliver what's required of it, which is on the field. Looking at the history of South African football administratively, I'm sure it's a strange graph that starts at the top, then goes down, and looks like it's resurging at this point. How would you look at the past quarter of a century?
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for coming out, first and foremost. Just to say, I got my first cap 1995, South Africa against Mauritius, Odi Stadium. So that was my first cap.
I guess we've all been capped. Everyone has a cap in this room, at least one.
The first one's always the important one. From an administration point of view, I think the culture in South African football from an administration point of view is that, and I'm going to be frank, we're here to be frank, we're here to be honest, but I think from an administrative point of view, it's always been hire the person you know, not hire the person who's got the best skills, the best qualities, who's capable of doing the job. And that's a cultural, historical thing that we're still going through now. It's very difficult. I mean, you have young people who want to get into football from an administration point of view, but it's very difficult because you don't get positions posted on club websites, on the league website, on SAFA website. It's basically, who do you know? How can you get in? Is who do you know? So it's very difficult. So in that, you don't get the best people. I'm not saying that right now we don't have the best, but I feel that once you open the market, in terms of administration capacity point of view, you'll start getting the best people in and the best people who know how to do the job. So from a historical point of view, that's been the case. And you own a club, it's always the same surnames that are, in the administration. And it's with many clubs, and those are facts. That's nothing I'm making up. Those are facts, and that's how things are structured in this country. So I feel that we need to move to a point where we get the best people for the job, and it needs to move away from that culture of, I don't know what kind of name to put to it or attribute it to it, but in terms of the phases, I started at the PSL in 2007, so that's when I can at least speak from a personal and experiential point of view. And obviously at that point, it was a stage where we were hosting the World Cup. 2007, that whole vibe of South Africa hosting the World Cup. And obviously international people, when they think of the host country, football, the World Cup's coming here, the first thing they think of is the league, because they've got nothing. The World Cup is still years away. There's not a ball being kicked, but they want to find out what's going on with football in that country. So I think from a PSL point of view, they took a strategic position to make sure that, okay, we are now putting ourselves out to the world in terms of the World Cup coming to South Africa. So we've got to put on the best foot forward. And obviously, from a developmental point of view, in terms of the quality of football, that takes a while. But what we can change is commercial, the broadcast. Those are things we can change instantaneously, exactly. So I think that was the drive in terms of making sure we get a good broadcast deal. We make sure that sponsors come on board, there's money into it. And I think that was kind of the rebirth of the PSL as we know it now. And it was good for the game because more money came in, more attention to the league came in. But for me, it was also kind of a gift and a curse in a way. As much as more money coming in, more attention coming in, but it had its negative effects on other things. And we could look to stadium attendance. As soon as we started getting a good broadcast deal, people decide to watch from home instead of going to the stadiums. And that has an impact on players as well. And when you get empty stadiums, the quality of the football, it might not be the same as when you have a full stadium. So I think for me, administratively, it's the capacity, the people who are doing the jobs currently. Because if you look around in terms of PSL clubs, if you would go to each PSL club and say, okay, this is the commercial manager. He's supposed to get money into this business. If you look at the people that are there, are they qualified to do that? Do they talk to corporates? Do they understand what's going on in the corporate world to try and bring in money from outside into those clubs? So I think we need to get the right people in those positions, and that's the only way that clubs and football can grow, because obviously from a sponsor side, they want value, and you need to create that value, but you need to have people who understand what you're selling. If you were to ask people in the PSL structures, what are we actually selling? Would we have one answer? Would we have one answer as a league that what are we selling to people? We need to be selling something, because at the end of the day, we're selling a product. And what product is it that we're selling? And we can't rely on other people. Us as football people need to be the ones who are dictating what that product is for us to go and sell it.
Okay, so there we go. A brief summary of basically, I guess, some of the history behind our discussion. And so how it's going to work tonight is that it's not just going to be a talk shop as far as the panel is concerned. At any point, we're going to engage you as our audience, as our partners in this discussion, to get your thoughts and your insights. So taking in what my panel have pretty much put as firelighters for the conversation here this evening, I do open it up to the floor for any statements or for any questions that you'd like to put to my panel. And I know the first round is always the weirdest. No one wants to do it, and it might get easier as we go along. But any takers at this point in time who would like to reflect on what we've discussed so far? We have one in the back. Okay, we have two gentlemen. Let's start with the gentleman in the back.
First of all, I would love to thank you guys to have organized this. I think it's been long overdue. We seriously need forums like this. One thing that I will also bring some criticism a bit is that going forward in terms of such things to grow, we need to invite stakeholders directly because some of us, we didn't know about it. We just, got hijacked along the way when we talking to friends that we heard about this. Then we made our way here. Obviously, yes. I'll start with the issue that Kabelo has put in terms of hiring the right people in the structures. I think let's start there. How do you develop a player and you expect him to do well while you cannot develop a manager who can know about the rules, who can solve problems for that particular player? Hence why we've seen things such as Ndoro issues, because those for me are administrative issues. I think, look at the Bafana while they were celebrating while the team did not qualify. So those for me are administrative errors. So I would say, let's get more people in terms of the development. Let's not only develop players, but let's develop the administrative side of it, the general managers, the CEOs. We need to get people who are clued up, who knows how to run the issues of football. I think also, if you check, a lot of people who are involved down there, they are people who have never experienced it on the field of play as well. So it's a chaos for us if we look at that. But I would like to say all the stakeholders, if we want our football to grow, let's definitely look at the issues of education. It's quite important. We are doing it as SAFPO now with our members, the footballers. I know that it's going to take a very long time for us to reach a stage whereby we'll be talking about our members are fully educated, but we are getting there. I think if we can educate 50, 100 a year, for us it's an achievement. I think we would love SAFA, other stakeholders to join suit, and I think it will be the best to have. I don't remember any footballer who have been given an opportunity to study via a scholarship at PSL or SAFA structures. If you can mention one, then I'll give you R1 million. Thank you.
Anybody help to make $1 million?
I can mention one. Can you
mention one?
At the clubs, yeah.
You can.
I'm sure, Spider, you know players who've had
Gotten a
scholarships
scholarship
through the clubs. I know Jimmy
Make $1 million, really. Go for it.
Mandla Masango. But okay, what you'll say, Keza Muteu, because maybe Kusekaya.
Kusekaya. Okay. Thank you so much, Tebogo. We have another gentleman who had something to say over here. I think, guys, it's just easier if you guys stay closer to. There we go. There's the mic.
How's it, guys? Just on Velila's point around the link between commercial success and on-the-field performance. You spoke about that link. I think you mentioned it twice. Now, just generally speaking, you need money to do anything, right? So the commercial returns that have increased significantly in the last 20 years are money coming into the game. I'm opening it up to everyone. I want to understand, as a sponsor within football, where does that money go, and why is it not going towards improving the on-field performance?
Okay, there we go. That's a good question. Really, you'd like to take a stab at it?
Yes, when you look into this link, and we're all happy, and at that time we're all excited. And if you remember, prior to South Africa getting the rights to host the World Cup, football was playing second fiddle to rugby and cricket in terms of sponsorship. And it was not just the TV deal. ABSA came in. They were already there in the system, but now they came in a big way in 2007. Nedbank came in a big way as well. And I remember even the first MTN 8 was in 2008, right? And suddenly we had this attention that we had, and our football was slightly going down based on our performance in 2004 and 2006 AFCON. But we're hoping that maybe this will also translate to the clubs boosting its technical structures. And this is something that I strongly feel that till today, as much as commercially we have one of the best leagues on the continent, but in terms of having good technical structures, we are way, way, way behind. Some of my friends who've been to these top CAF tournaments, like him, I remember Senzo also when he was at Parades, and some of the people who have worked with CAF, and most of the time we always refer to ourselves here in South Africa as having the best. But when you travel up here north, in North Africa, it's something totally different altogether. I remember in 2014, we had the Chan tournament, and CAF at that time was still trying to introduce the issue of club licensing. And I know club licensing, everything through him, because he's a CAF instructor. But he at home is not involved on club licensing. Now, at that time, I spoke to Al Ali. In Egypt, Al Ali has got 9 centers throughout the country, 9 centers. And just this year, Teacake, I think they've spoken about opening centers in West Africa and East Africa, right?
Yes, quite true,
yes. Yes, that is that. You look in our technical structures. This morning I was having an interview on Ukozi, and they were talking about the Under 23 game from last night. And they came to the issue of identity, because the issue of identity between how Bafana played on Sunday, yes, qualified, but how Under 23 also played yesterday and qualified, the issue of identity was coming out there. But I was saying, how do you have identity when you had Steve Kompela, who was at Kaizer Chiefs, playing like this, Solinas comes, he plays like this, and the German comes now, and he plays like this. You know, so there's that confusion that's there. So what I'm trying to say is that the boost that we've had commercially has not translated to boosting the technical structures. If we talk about the level of coaching, at that level, how many clubs do have technical directors, proper technical directors, you know? So I don't want to go further than that, but that is the issue I'm talking about.
Okay. No, thank you, Bailey. I guess in summary of everything we've discussed so far, the biggest loser would seem to be the national team. But I didn't want to say that statement too early on, because I guess the caveat is there is somewhat of an upswing in fortunes. And that's not just with Bafana, that's with Banyana as well, the under 23s. What do you think that's down to? Surely, you know, we're glad to come into this discussion on the back of qualification, so let's take a positive spin on it. We'll unpack whatever comes along the way, but I think to balance the conversation, what has changed for the better in the last couple of years?
Tulanungangshai, I know you wanted to say something, and I think just first to go back to Tebogo, I think Tebogo says some stakeholders should have been involved and invited. It's quite true, but I think the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and this is the first step, and I hope it will grow as we go along, and more people will be involved, more people will be invited, and then let's discuss. It's our game. We used to have a slogan that says "Ipola letu." It is our game, and it has made millionaires out of this, and a lot of people have been able to get out of the ghetto, so to speak. But somebody said our game has been both a blessing and a curse at the same time. I have 2 examples to give you. One, I remember interviewing Roger Fitumba, and I was quite amazed by the way he used to pass the ball, and people used to go gaga when Ronaldo does or Ronaldinho does this kind of, but Roger Fitumba and many others used to do it. And Fitumba said to me, you know, Thomas, football is a simple game made difficult by the technicians. That's what Roger Fitumba said. And by so saying, Roger was trying to tell me that we are importing average coaches to come and coach us here in South Africa. Look what Pitso Mosimane has achieved, what Steve Kompela has done, Kevin Johnson, and many others, what they are doing on the local. Give them a chance. Let's develop our own people. And Tebogo, you also talked about education. Yes, I agree, it's key. But if you look at Banyana Banyana, 98% of Banyana Banyana players have degrees or are about to complete their degrees. So this should be the way to go in our... Those are some of the things that we need to encourage our players to... Clubs should try and encourage their players to study, because it's heartbreaking to see a player that you used to pay 20 rands to go and watch, and then he is asking 10 rands on the streets. It's heartbreaking. It cannot go on like this forever. And I think those are some of the things that we need to look at. But the good thing is that when you look at our under-17, I think they've been to the World Cup twice. The under-20 have been to the World Cup. They've qualified for the AFCON right now. Banyana Banyana qualified for the Olympic. Now they've qualified for the World Cup. The under-20 have done it. The under-23s are, you know, and I think we need to be happy about that. But why is it that suddenly at junior level we seem to be doing so well, but we can't translate that into the senior team? How long has the senior team been struggling? Do we stumble along the way and just don't get it right somehow? Or are we restricting our... Why is it that Bafana used to be a respected force in the continent, but right now, even Mauritania, for heaven's sake, Mauritania, who wouldn't hold our bags, but they can dream of beating Bafana, and they do it, you know, these days. So those are, I think, some of the things that we need to look at and ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? How do we correct it? Yes, a proper structure seems to be in place. Our youth teams are doing well, for both girls and men. Can we translate it? Because the more we qualified for these tournaments, like Velile was saying, our under-23 yesterday played like Brazil. They were outstanding, you know. But then, are we going to take those boys and promote them to the senior team? Or are we going to say, no, let's wait until they are 28 and then we can promote them? So those are some of the challenges, I think, that face us.
Sorry, can I just add on to that? I think with the question you asked in terms of our junior national teams, our men's and women's teams doing well, I think, yes, we can be happy, but we've got to ask ourselves the real question. Is it by chance or is it planned? Is it planned? Is it planned or is it by chance? Because we'll hear people saying, this is part of Vision 2020. What's the plan? Is it part of the plan? I mean, Germany in 2000 Euros, they got eliminated at the group stages. And they went all out and say, we're changing the way we run football. If you looked at that German team then, it was all white people. It was just white people. They changed their plan. Club licensing started because of the German FA. That's why we have club licensing. Because in 2000, the German FA said, we're coming up with a 10-year plan, and we're sticking to this plan. No wonder they won the World Cup in Brazil. So do we have a plan? We can't be chancing every single time in terms of the junior national teams making it to the World Cup and then masqueraded as success. Success is playing at under 17, and then you graduate to the under 20, then you graduate to under 23, you graduate to the under 20, to the senior national team. And those are the players, because you're building experience in playing in tournaments, and you know when they get to Bafana, they've played in Ouagadougou at under 17 level, so they understand the conditions. I was in Niger for the under 20 World Cup, and I was speaking to Coach Thabo Sinong, and I was like, how many players from, you've done well, we've qualified for 2 consecutive under 20s. How many players from that last World Cup are playing regular PSL football? Only one player who played yesterday in the under 23 game for SuperSport United. So is that progress? We can say we're happy at qualifying. A World Cup comes and goes. But what's going to happen to the senior national team? Because then there, you start getting people like Lars Veldijk from Holland who come in because, most of the guys have not played in junior national team structures. And when we were successful, that was the key element, is that guys had played. Benny McCarthy played under 17. Benny McCarthy played under 20. Benny McCarthy played under 23. So there was a succession. So that's what we need to talk about really and say, do we have a plan? What's the plan? And if we don't have a plan, then it's by chance, it's luck.
Well put. And before we move, more than one. Before we move forward, I think on that point, club licensing. Can you just demystify that for us? What exactly is the concept of club licensing, and why is it more so important now, more than ever?
I think club licensing, to put it, basically, it's a tool to professionalize football. Obviously, when the Germans started in 2000, they started it for a particular purpose, to start going out and getting more players. So they wanted to redevelop their youth structures. They started with youth structures. So every single club in Germany had to spend a minimum amount on youth structure. And I remember when I was at the PSL and we had a partnership with the Bundesliga, we went to visit the Bundesliga, and we had an opportunity to go to Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim youth structures, not the senior team, their youth structures, were much more advanced than any professional club here in South Africa, because they invested in youth. And hence why you're getting good players coming out of Germany. That's why you're getting a lot of players playing all over Europe from Germany, and that's why the national team is so structured. So then UEFA developed it on that point and say, okay, let's look at the 5 pillars of football, which is football, which includes youth football, administration, infrastructure, legal, and finance. So those 5 key areas of football, that's what we need to tackle. So the system is that every league that institutes club licensing, every club must apply for a license every season. So it's like taking your car for a roadworthy test. You must go check out all the different areas. Now, in each area, there's certain criteria. So within football, there's criteria A, B, and C. A means you must have that criteria. So having a head of youth development, that's an A criteria. And non-negotiable. If you don't have one with a certain level of coaching, with a certain level of experience, you do not get your license. That means you cannot play in that league. So that's how hardcore they were. I mean, there were clubs that were relegated based on club licensing that did not play in the league because of club licensing. So I think the Germans were not pussyfooting, and you know Germans how they are. They were not pussyfooting about it, and you see the results today. And I think with us, we've kind of been pussyfooting around it. We have been kind of, let's get into it, but not really rigorously saying we need to start implementing club licensing. I mean, with my work with CAF, we go to different member associations and teach them about club licensing. So right now it's more of an educational process to teach them exactly what it is and how it can help and benefit. But it needs all the stakeholders to be in, despite the challenges we have in Africa. I mean, from an infrastructure point of view, obviously, each club must have a home stadium, each club must have a training facilities, but in Africa it's difficult because we don't own our own stadia. It's very difficult, but we can come up with ways, if we have plans around that, in terms of how do we then use government stadia to benefit football. And that discussion has not been had at a high level in terms of, you'll get, Chiefs playing their home matches here at FNB, then they'll go to Polokwane, then one day they'll go to Durban, but how is that benefiting teams in Polokwane? Because teams in Polokwane should be the ones benefiting in Polokwane. How is that benefiting? So I think the discussion has been had, but in essence, club licensing is a tool that is there to assist professional football develop in that country in all aspects of football. And it goes back to exactly what I was saying. So in terms of administration, you cannot be an official that does not have that certain level of qualifications or expertise. Otherwise, you do not get your license. And it's simple as that. So I think we need to force and drive club licensing in the country for our football to develop. But it needs to be not something that we say we're doing on paper, which from a CAF level, a lot of countries say, we've got a club licensing system. They'll send you pieces of paper. But when you go on the ground, you see that it's not being implemented.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As we open the floor back up again, Tulani, I know you had something that you wanted to bring up. Is it still relevant? Has your question been answered? How are you, brother?
Okay, thank you very much. And this is long overdue to see the football future, the young people of football here gathered together. And I see, when I look, I don't see Amakehla because ngababalele manje. Ngabasebalele la. You know? You're part of the youth league still. You're relevant. You're relevant. And I think my point was around sponsorship and also flow of talent. Just like in football, when you promote your under-17s, you must promote your under-15s as well to come up. But now with football, what we find is, even administratively, is that the old guard, which is, we can't run it from that, the old guard stays there, but times move on, times move. Brian is here next to me. I'm sure he's thinking what I'm about to say. I won't say it. But bafile abanye abantu sekusele nje amagama kuphela bafile ayikho into abayenzayo, you know, and that's the truth, that's the honest truth. But unfortunately, because from the top we feel that we are the chiefs, or we end up being, I'm the president, I'm elected, or I'm this in this, you know, in this organization. They own football and they can't move. And if they don't move, you don't find the others coming up. When I worked in 2010 at the World Cup, I saw a lot of youngsters, a lot of young people in football. I was very excited because I thought, there's our 10. We have a chance. I don't see them anymore. They've moved on and they're doing other things, you know. And for football to grow and for these other young ones to come up and add valuable contribution to football, there has to be other avenues created in football. So if that one person and that one person are there for 20 years or 30 years, and they themselves can't grow, which means the ones below there can't grow, all right? So most football clubs and football in general, we're not pulling the same direction. Some go left, some go right. I see it with the SAFA and PSL, it's left and right, okay? I see it with football clubs inside. Old guard, left, young ones, right. There are still people in football in this day and age who are sitting in offices that are wireless, like not wireless Wi-Fi, with no wires, no laptops, nothing, okay? So how do you run football in this modern day and age when you can't send a WhatsApp, when you can't send an email? Even fax is dead, you know? So just like the Germans, I won't put a feet around it, you know? Football is suffering from what politics is suffering from. You find a comrade who is now hired or deployed to Minister of Communication, who knows nothing about anything in communications, but because he's a comrade or she's a comrade, they are there, right? So now, how do you expect those comrades who are sleeping, who are old, to talk to a sponsor, a blue chip company, at that level, or talk, you know, to a potential partnership that could have a big breakthrough in football? They can't. They can't talk to those people. But unfortunately, the ones who can talk to those people are not there. They are suppressed. They're at the bottom there, you know. So we are suffering from this, you know, this movement of talent and flow. It's not happening, okay? And I was gonna be very long, but you know, I don't want to be as long as the old guard. Hello, Lux.
Thank you very much, Tulani. We appreciate your musings. Anyone else on the floor who'd like to give us their thoughts?
Yeah.
Let's go. Oh, Brian, go for it.
Thanks.
We're gonna do one more after Brian. Go for it, sir.
The mic.
Geez, where do I even begin? I think this is a great start. This is something that one would have loved to see being happening for quite a while. There's so much that we need to talk about football in South Africa. And I think, like it says, for me, there's a lot, starting from the structure of ownership of clubs in South Africa. I think that's where the problem is. And I think if we sat with a lot of people that own clubs in South Africa, whether in the PSL and First Division, and ask them, what is the reason for their existence as a club? People will never give you an answer because they don't have. And for me, I think football is more about people. And one of the reasons why football is not growing in South Africa is because there's no one club that can really say, this is a club that is about people. It's and when it comes to the clubs themselves, that's why a Kaizer Chiefs can play in Durban, their home games. And there's a lot of things that are unique to South Africa that were good back in the day, but that I believe they've reached their sell-by date, that football needs to change with the times. And until that happens, football is not going to grow in this country. And you look around here, there's where are some of the former players? You look in the clubs, in management, like you were saying, there are a lot of people that are, and when you look in this room, you can see, like he says, a lot of great minds of football, a lot of people that have been working through in football, but a lot of them, they end up leaving the game because clubs are owned by families, and to a large extent, I think white clubs are structured differently, and Sundowns is an exception, but but really, what's killing our football is the structure of ownership, and until not only government but us as a people, until we really understand that football at the highest level, football is politics. And until we understand that football is politics, then that's when we will start changing how we run football. And there's so much.
I know. I'm sure you got stories for days. But I think that's a good point to leave it on as far as that. And maybe just to bring it back to my panel, and I'll come back to the floor in a second, but what addresses that? This whole us and them situation. I guess club licensing to a certain extent by forcing professionalism on a league, on a club, could address those issues. But what else needs to change, Teacake?
I think Brian, in a sense, has hit the nail because in the olden days, you knew Pretoria Kellys was a club from Atteridgeville, and people identified with it. Benoni United, it was around Sinaba and surrounding areas. But now, Mamelodi Sundowns, unfortunately, abakwazi nabo ukuthi badlala iLoftus home ground yabo or iAtteridgeville home ground yabo, and yet there is HMP in Mamelodi. It's in a dilapidated, sorry state, Mamelodi. There you are, And at least Pirates have gone back to Orlando in Soweto. Kaizer Chiefs have abandoned Meadowlands and they are playing either in Durban or in Bombela, in Polokwane, or at FNB Stadium. Now, maybe the time has come for football leaders and the government to sit down and maybe try to reach an agreement in terms of maybe a 99-year-old lease whereby you can own a stadium. Where you can, Mamelodi, if you look around Mamelodi HMP Stadium, there is vast open land around there. Do you think if they can renovate that stadium to meet international standards and then build shops around that area and just develop that, you are also offering employment, and then you have people also, there's so much that we can do. And that is why I believe maybe the time has come for football leaders to go to the government and say, listen, commercially, we are doing better, but the game is just not improving. How about leasing stadiums for us so that we can own the stadiums and we can do so much to improve our clubs? I don't know. It's just something that I'm throwing on the floor, and maybe somebody has a better idea.
And just to support you there, Teacake, I know maybe those who work closely with this club is not the best model to promote black leopards. Administratively, maybe they can still improve. But if you look at their venue, Toendo Stadium, there's a mall, So people go to shop. Yeah. They do everything there. They know their Saturday is there. And hence, you find this situation. Even the MTC Shield is there this weekend, right? So there are success stories. If you look at the initiatives, clubs like, I know all over the place, but clubs like Cape Town City, that's a very tough market there in Cape Town, because there it's your EPL people, but they're trying to get those people closer. John Committees, I understand, also is applied for land. He wants to build a 10,000 setup, because I also feel that these gigantic World Cup venues that we are left with are not really working for us. We see the orange seats each and every time Kaizer Chiefs is playing here, because Stadium Management South Africa is paying Kaizer Chiefs to play at the FNB Stadium. But there are games where you feel that, okay, it's still the same Stadium Management South Africa that is paying you. Why don't you take other games at least to Dobsonville Stadium or at least to Ren Stadium? But maybe for Kaizer Chiefs' profile, there's not enough suits in those stadiums, So, so these are the things, like Teacake is talking about, that we seriously need look into. Look, there are some positives that we're seeing from some clubs, but you find that some of these clubs that are doing these positives is your so-called smaller clubs, and where you expect to see the leaders, because the reality is that 65% of South African football support is based with only 2 or 3 clubs.
And there's no undoing that. I think it's too late.
And those clubs need to lead in each and every way, in every aspect of the game.
Okay, well.
He says that, but I think those numbers are like that because I'm supporting Mpumalanga Black Aces. Tomorrow, my club is gone. It's gone to Cape Town. I'm going to now start supporting Chiefs and Pirates because I know Chiefs and Pirates will be around in the next 10 years. That's why I'm supporting Chiefs and Pirates. Because my club might not be around. So why am I going to invest my heart, my soul, everything into a club that might be sold in the next year or 2? That's the reality of it. And it goes back to what Brian said in terms of club ownership. There needs to be a way in terms of club ownership structure from the league, how we protect these clubs. We protect them because you're asking people to support a club, but there's no guarantee. Most of the club owners are guys who are making money through government tenders. Those run out. And when it runs out, what's he going to do? I'm going to sell the club. I'm going to sell the club because they have not built a sustainable business. They're living paycheck to paycheck, basically season to season. As long as I don't get relegated, it's a success. Okay, on to the next season. You ask a club for a 5-year strategy, none of them will give you a 5-year strategy. So that's where it starts. That's where it starts.
Okay, back to the floor. I will be with you, Senzo. There was a gentleman behind you with the spectacles there, and then there's quite a few on the side. And also, Shaba. We'll get to you, Shaba. Have some herbal life in the meantime. We'll get to you just now. Let's start with you, the man just behind, and then we'll come to you, sir.
I just want to just touch on continuity and consistency, because we have this under 17, under 20 doing well, and then those players, they don't go anywhere, because you look at the NFD, instead of adopting those players and building from there, we're recycling players from the PSL. If someone doesn't do good in the PSL, gets recycled in the NFD. You look at a lot of teams in the NFD, instead of looking for talent and going for players who are promising, players who can bring something to the game, they go and look for former PSL players. And that is where most of NFD teams are failing. And then you look at football ownership. There is no accountability. Teams are there and people are given roles, but you look at those people, they're just sitting there because they are related to the owner and whatnot. But if there was accountability, even when the money is drying out from the tenders and whatnot, but if there's accountability, then you know that as a marketing manager, I have quite a sponsor. I mean, you look at PSL teams, how many have sponsors? It boils down to accountability where people have roles, but with the little chance they've been given, they don't go out there and then work on teams. A Chiefs can go to Durban and fill up Moses Mabhida, but an Amazulu from Durban can't fill up Moses Mabhida. So it goes back to the football management where someone is in the team, But because no one sits and then say, okay, you are the marketing manager, what is our strategy to get people to the stadium this season? They don't have that. We just say, okay, it's fine, you the what, and then it just goes on. Whoever comes to the stadium comes, who doesn't come, doesn't come. So I think it's mostly that we're not gonna get our national team strong when our management doesn't look at the talent that there is in national under 20, where we need to bring those players in NFD, then they grow. Because with game time, that's where you go. I mean, you look at the likes of Cesc Fabregas. At 16, he was assisting Thierry Henry at the Bernabeu, and then in 2010, he was assisting Iniesta in the World Cup. Consistency. But with us, we lack that consistency.
Okay. To the front. One more question. You can go, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sinesipo. Let me just stand up a height. Okay, I've got just 3 points to make quickly. Yeah, the first point is somebody on the panel mentioned the issue of national identity. I think, again, it goes back to the issue of the clubs. You know, I think the examples are there when we look at international football, you know, in terms of, for an example, who won the World Cup in 2010, you know, and who won the World Cup in 2014. Spain, that was Barcelona, and Germany, Bayern Munich. Why I'm bringing that is because clubs have got such an important role to play in assisting the national teams, you know. And we see top national teams, a lot of how they play, you know, they adopt a lot of what top clubs in those respective countries are doing, you know. So I think also it's very important, because if you look in the PSL, if you analyze deeper, you look at you know, the clubs who are obviously goes back to the issue of technical competence, you know, the playing model, teams who've got a clear idea, clear playing style, clear playing model, and that is sustainable, you know. There's very few, you know, and when clubs are trying to get to that level, you know, it's disappointing when you read from people who should be indirectly educating the masses in football, who are going to start calling clubs game model FC, but the same person is going to wear a Barcelona t-shirt, you know. So Steve Kombela once made a comment, we were very narrow-minded, we are very local. We need to look out, because for us to grow, you know, as a nation, at a club level, you know, even at the national team level, we really need to look at what is happening outside. That is the first point. The second point is the young players at PSL level, you know. My biggest issue is if you look at what is happening currently with young players that are playing in the PSL, what happens after 3 or 4 games? They're out injured, you know. You know why? Because at development in South Africa, a lot of times, and what I've seen, is that players are prepared technical, tactical, maybe mental, maybe other elements of development, but there's not a proper physical preparation of these players. Hence, within 2 or 3 games, they play and then they are injured. You know, it's not a coincidence. And if you look at the nature of those injuries, you can see it's muscle injuries. So it means the load from the academy into the first team, you know, there's no balance. And obviously, you know what happens is that the youngster, 19-year-old, comes in, has one good game, 20 minutes. And then what happens with the media? We want him to play 90 minutes. Is he ready to play 90 minutes at the highest level? You know? Is a Ngobo, for an example, ready to compete with Dan Freeman, you know? International player, you know? I was now watching the future champs. You look at Spartak, the chest of those players, you know, just the legs. And you look at ours, Jesus. You know, just the chest is flat. So again, it's very important for us to understand that players, we are developing players at a technical level, at a tactical level, but we're not developing them at a physical level to be able to compete at the highest level. We can't run away from it, it's there. We see how big these players are. And the last point is when you mentioned Hoffenheim, top example. You know, again, I'll go back to the issue of technical competence. Who's the head coach of Hoffenheim at the moment? Julian Nagelsmann. How old is he? He's 31, you know. When did he take that team? At the age of 28. You know, they were fighting relegation. The following season, they finished 4th. He was the German coach of the year, you know. And now they are consistently in the Champions League. We saw them now. You know, is now moving to Red Bull Leipzig at the age of 31, you know. And how many, we know the average age of coaches in the Bundesliga is 36. So again, it's not a coincidence, but it's not only the development of players, but also the development of technocrats, of technicians to be able to enhance the players to be at the level in which is needed. You know, why are our players, when they move from South Africa, they can't play in the EPL straight away? You know, we need to ask ourselves those questions, you know, because we want to have these youngsters playing, yes, but are they prepared in all fundamental factors of top level performance? You know, that is another question. It's happening now because when you look at international tournament like Future Champs, how many people? I look at journalists who write stories. How many are there looking at what is happening at under 17 level? You know, we need to look. How are our teams competing with? That is not even. I spoke to a friend of mine at Club Brugge, asking him about what is the under 17 they have here. He says, my friend, that is our C team. You know, but we can't beat their C team. So you can see how far we are. So the clubs, the 32, in conclusion, the 32 professional clubs in South Africa have a big responsibility, you know, to lead everybody else who's involved in football. It's very, very important. You know, we've got PSL clubs, we've got no conditioning coaches, no, I can go on, you know. So it needs to start there.
Thank you very much. 3 points well made, and then we'll take the last one from the floor. We're going to keep coming back, but I'm going to give my panel a chance to speak. But since you've been holding on a while, and as someone I know who works behind the scenes in football, it would be good to get your thoughts.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And firstly, it's very, very exciting to see the faces that I'm seeing today. You're right, very young faces. You know, I think going back to the issue around the ownership of the clubs, we must not fool ourselves. Clubs are in this thing for business. They want bottom line. They go and play 10 matches, things go sour. The chairman who's there starts panicking. He starts coming down to the change room. He starts shouting on the corridors. Things must change. Why is Vele not playing? Why is this one not playing? Why is this one not doing this? No, but it's because we're trying. No. No. I'll give you my experiences, but I'm just giving overall. Now I'm just generalizing, you know. So I'm not disagreeing with the last speaker to say that the responsibility of a football must be rather led by the clubs. I differ with that completely. I think clubs are clubs because they've got their own formations, they've got their own reason for existence. Mamelodi Sundowns wants to conquer Africa. The leader of Mamelodi Sundowns pours money in it. You know, if you look at the technical team of Mamelodi Sundowns, I counted about 5 physiotherapists alone. They've got about 3 fitness trainers, and all those are essential members of the team. So that particular club wants to take a particular direction in terms of how they want to compete in South Africa and Africa as a whole. Even Pirates, you look at the technical team, you can see that they are very clear in their head what is it that they want to achieve by spending money and ensuring that things are happening, even if results don't come immediately. Like Kabelo was saying, there are things that you can do immediately in a club structure or even a football structure in an organization like PSL or SAFA that people can start seeing, your branding, marketing, going out there for people to see that these people are serious. But it takes time on the pitch. It takes time. Some clubs don't believe in development. Even him, Sundowns, they've got brilliant youngsters, brilliant, but where do they end up? You know, you've got 1 or 2 that will be promoted to, not because they don't value what they are doing down there, but the nature of the club. They just want the top stars to come and play for their club. So going back to the national team, I still believe that we need to have a national academy. I still believe that, I don't know what was the real relationship between the School of Excellence and SAFA. I mean, that model worked. You know, most of the national team that you are, national players that you're talking about, from Boka Mohelo to the under 17 to under 20, most of them come from that School of Excellence. You had few that came from clubs that you would just say, okay, there's good players from the Academia, Ajax, There's two good ones from KwaZulu Natal. Brashik saw them. You know, they will come and be part of that. But most of the players that has really played, I'm not 100% certain about my stats, Mr. Miandu, but I'm, you know, my recollection of facts tells me that most of those players came from there. So I'm saying, let's not really put pressure or look to clubs for them to give us direction in terms of how we must look at our development and how we can have that succession of players coming in and out. For instance, we spoke about under 23 that played yesterday. They played a good brand of football. They were enjoying themselves. They had fun, you understand? But are they going to have fun when Mushin is screaming on them on the line at the PSL level? Only few of them will be really, you know, playing. So I'm saying that let's rather, you know, encourage or rather lobby that let's have a national academy whereby at least there's one center of excellence that we know that all our 40 best players, 40 under 17 best players are there. You know, they are looked after by SAFA under the leadership of SAFA. But at club level, gentlemen, I'm being honest to you. Clubs are there to ensure that they don't get relegated. Number two, they make their money. Number three, they remain in the league.
It's club licensing, because we cannot separate what the FA needs to do and what the clubs needs to do. It means that we are lacking technical vision. We're lacking technical vision between the FA and the league and the clubs, the 32 clubs. I will tell you something. Tebogo Mokoena, Mbule, they are identified by the national team selectors. The clubs go to the national team training camp. They see these boys playing for the national team. They identify them. The next time the national team wants to call these players, the clubs are saying, no, these players are not available. But the clubs has identified these players from the national team camp. You know, so these are the things that we seriously need to look at. How the FA and the clubs, especially at professional level, work together. But even further than that, in terms of the quality of the junior structures as well, which goes back to club licensing. So until the club licensing that KB is talking about is implemented in its entirety and is being done very well, and we improve that two-way between Parktown and Nasrec, we'll not be talking about this.
It seems the gentleman is laying the blame at the door of SAFA to say they must dictate, they must run it, they must push for the school of excellence. Would you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, because in terms of the rules, the Football Federation in every country is the supreme organization that runs football. Even the professionals have got to kowtow to the federation. Unfortunately, in this country, you have a situation where the tail is the one that is wagging the dog. It's so sad, it's tragic, really. We've got to face this fact. We've got to say these things, but it's a fact that SAFA can have an international game and the PSL will say, no, we've got an obligation to our sponsors, and then this is not a FIFA week, we are not going to release our players. Why can't the two organizations sit down? I hear they talk about a joint liaison committee. For me, it is as dead as a dodo because it's not working. Why can't they say, okay, let's sit down, here is our program for the year, and then on such a particular date, we are going to need players for the under 23. Even if it's for an Olympic qualifier, you need Mbule, you need Tebogo Mokoena, you need. But because they are already broken through in the senior Premier League, the clubs don't want to release them. What is at stake here is nationalism and patriotism, but it doesn't seem to work. It seems like the left hand doesn't want to work with the right hand. I'm sorry, I'm even saying it the other way around, but that is the reality. And until such time that SAFA and the PSL bury their differences for the sake of the country and developing football, we will never get anywhere. I heard somebody talking about a national academy. I would like to actually add on that and say, why can't we have provincial academies? We've got 9 provinces in this country. Mulomowando Matoho is from Venda. He was discovered in Bloemfontein. That he's a good player by Bloemfontein Celtic. Do you think if he was discovered at 10 years or 8 years in Thohoyandou and then taken to a provincial center of excellence in Thohoyandou or in Limpopo, where he will be developed, and during June school holidays, all these players from the regional academies come to the national center of excellence where they play tournaments. And our national coaches can come there and identify these boys. At the same time, you have guys like Alex Babela in Limpopo. You have Patrick Mayo in the Eastern Cape. You give them employment. You employ them as talent scouts in their areas, where they will identify these boys and recommend them to the regional centers of excellence.
Yes, I think just to add on to that, I think in terms of the National Academy, we can have national academies, but the clubs must be responsible for development, because that's where the young players play day in, day out. We need to create strong competitions at youth level so that clubs play in and out. The best of those players can then go to that national, but we have to create strong competitions at lower league levels. In terms of, it goes even into scouting. I mean, I'm privileged to have worked on the Nedbank Yona team search for the past 6 years. There should not be a Nedbank Yona team search. I mean, I'm glad I was paid to do that work, but there should not be a Nedbank Yona team search. Why is a corporate now getting into football development? Why is it? Because there's gaps, and the corporates see gaps. The corporates see gaps in terms of how can we assist, and they come in and they put their money, which is welcomed. I mean, the Nedbank Yona team search is a great initiative, but in essence, if everything was running well, there should not be a Nedbank Yona team search. And it also goes back to strategy and planning. Some of the work I also do is with FIFA for their professional football department. And I was asked to do a research. I was asked to look at 3 leagues, the German league, Italian league, and the Dutch league, from 2012, over a 5-year period, from 2012 to 2017. Look at those leagues, and then in each season, look at the top 5 teams in each season, and in those squads, how many of those players have played international matches, whether it's under 17 or senior. And trust me, it was a long, mundane, exhaustive, and FIFA doesn't tell you why they need it. They just say, do it. So you're doing it, and you're doing it. And now you're looking, and you're saying, okay, he played this number, he played, but then things start coming out. You're like, okay. So now you start looking overall. Over the 5 years, the Italian teams used an average of 90 players. 90 players over the 5 years. The German teams used an average of 35. That says something. Then you start looking deeper, and then it says, you look at the German teams, the guys who are playing under 17, you start seeing them, you're ticking them off, he played this many matches under. Then you're like, but in that under 17 year he qualified, he was playing 2 matches for the under 20. Then he moves to under 20, he's playing under 20 matches, but 2 matches for the. Then you're like, these guys actually have a plan. And I'm telling you now, all those players that came up like that were the players that won the Confed Cup in Russia, 2017. Most of those players who I was looking at, I knew their names because I saw them in that research. I'm like, but these are the guys that have come up. I mean, they weren't your big star players that, your Ozils and your, but they have a big pool. Germany has a big pool. And you start seeing that a lot of players playing for youth level had dual citizenship. And they only kept the best. So that's where you see other players now playing senior national. They play junior national team for Germany, but then they play for their senior team. They play for Ghana or for other countries. So they develop, they don't mind developing, but they pick the best. And I think that's where we've also missed out. We've got so many people from other countries in South Africa that are Zimbabwean, their heritage is Zimbabwean, Nigerian, Congolese. But do you see a player of Nigerian descent in our national team? Do you see a player of Congolese descent, of Zimbabwean descent, of Zambian descent? Players that are born in South Africa, post 1994. They're born in South Africa, they're South African, but they don't get to go to. Why is that? It can't be. Even our rugby team has players of other countries playing for the national team, but football we don't. So must tell you something that clearly at junior level, when you're going for a trial, the coach sees your name and already they're discriminating. And that needs to change because those players come with attributes that we don't have as South Africans. At the under-20 AFCON, you could see South African players were all exactly the same certain type. Then you have the Nigerians who are like mountains. And that's how, we cannot even just, age cheating or not, Nigerians are physically more built than South Africans. That's a fact. And there are Nigerian players whose mom is South African, dad Nigerian, born in this country, all he knows is South Africa, but he can't play in South Africa. And then he can't also play in Nigeria because he doesn't live there. So we're leaving out a big gap of players, a pool of players that we could utilize for our team, our national teams, our club teams. But then, at the same token, we have a rule in the PSL where we allow 5 foreign players in our teams. Sundowns could put out 11 players that do not qualify to play for Bafana Bafana. That's what's killing us. But then we want to take players from outside who do not qualify to play for our national teams. So we're killing our own national teams by making sure that, okay, we have 5 players who can come in. Yes, they can be permanent residents, and now they're permanent residents, they don't count as a foreigner. But they can't still play for our national team. So sometimes we've also got to be patriotic because in Egypt, the leagues there, no foreign goalkeepers. All their goalkeepers are Egyptian. That's their rule. There can be no foreign goalkeepers in the Egyptian league. And that's a stance that they took because if they don't do it that way, their goalkeepers are never going to get a chance. And a goalkeeper position, it takes a while for you to get a chance. So if it's not their own, then when are their own going to get a chance? So sometimes we've also got to be patriotic. It's not xenophobic, but it's patriotic to say, how can we make rules that benefit us, but also look at the talent that's here? Because we are a very multicultural society with very diverse people from all over the continent. How can we use those people and to benefit our national teams? You see the German national team has got players from so many different ethnic groups, and that's why they're successful, because they've found a way to blend all those nationalities into their play. But we have not found that way. That's why it goes back to a plan, a system. We don't have a plan. It's just by chance what's happening.
Those players you're talking about, white, when they're white, we take them. There's a lot of white players that are, have dual citizenship, that are playing for the country, that have played for the country, but we have never done it for with African players.
I want to give it to Chairman. I got questions. I'm done with this side. After Mr. Katala, we're going this side. Oh, Lux. Don't put your hand up so high, Lux. We're coming to, sir. Mr. Katala.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to express myself here. And I'm very happy to see this kind of gathering where you talk about the development of football in South Africa. And when you talk about in South Africa, it's the whole region of Southern Africa. And I'm very happy that you mentioned the club ownership with Brian. But the club ownership is not just because there's a family which is running the club. That's why the club is not performing well. That's why football is not developing. No. If you take the example of AC Milan, it was Silvio Berlusconi, but he knew nothing about football because he was a media mogul. So he took Galliani. So Galliani knew about football. So that's why Galliani went to the Netherlands and picks up 3 of the best. That was Frank Rijkaard, Marco van Basten, and Ruud Gullit. And look what they've done. The same applies for Juventus. Juventus, ever since, it belongs to the family that owns the Fiat. And they've never changed. Why are they called old lady? Because they've got the management. They're surrounded by people who know the game. And if you don't do that, if you say that just because I'm the owner of the club, I don't have to have people around me, that's where you're killing the game. You have to take the people that are competent to do the job, not because you know them you know the mother, you know the father, or you coming from the same environment. No, it won't help. It kills the game. And then when it comes to the youth structure, you mentioned the German model, which is very nice, but the German model is copied on the senior team who are playing most of the time in the Champions League. And you will see in Europe, before Juventus can play, Manchester can play against Real Madrid, you will see the reserve team, the youngsters, they will meet. That is something we don't have in Africa. So before Sundowns can play against Vita, we don't see the youngsters of Vita playing against Sundowns. How can they develop? That's why you see, that's the reason you see they don't have more games that have been played and at highest level. And one thing that I've noticed also in South Africa, and when South Africa started going outside and play against other nations, what I've seen is they were not doing the due diligence before. I remember I was interacting with Teacake. He said they went to Congo, DRC, and they know very well that in DRC they speak French, but they had no one speaking French in the team. How are you going to cope? And also, you want to play African Cup of Nations, but when you're preparing for the tournament like that one, you go and play in Norway. It doesn't really make sense.
Basics, I guess. It boils down to basics. Lux, we're ready for you, brother.
I deliberately decided not to wear a jacket because I wanted a formal jacket. Because I wanted to create a distance between the politician in the PSL and just a person who loves football, who's a villager. That means no one must ask me anything about the PSL today. I've had enough outbursts. So, first of all, I must say I'm exceptionally proud of what's happening here today, because often there is this perception that us us Africans, black people in particular, cannot be organized and put something like this. But I want to take it a little bit further, because if talking was an Olympic sport, and if ideas, today I was driving, listening to a radio station, and the callers were giving expert opinion on something. If that was an Olympic sport, us Africans, black people in particular, will be champions. So that means that we have got the ideas. Yes, we can have ideas here and copy everything and talk about everything we've learned in Europe or whatever it is, but it doesn't end there. So if people, the general feeling is that, and I do have this confidence that amongst us here today, we've got the so-called next layer of leadership, but it can't pick up the bad habits. We can't meet, complain, have fun, go home. It has to end. The problems in African football, we all know. Now, the challenge to yourselves and Fidel and others is, how do these platforms, like it's the first time that something like this happened in Johannesburg since I've been here, that we have the confidence to put something like this together. But we don't just come here to complain, have biscuits and coffee and go home. Otherwise, Mtunzi has no reason to be here from ABSA. We've got to give them the confidence that in this room, we have the capacity to complain, but come up with the solutions. If we want to be trusted with this thing, we must have the capacity to come up with the solutions. Now, you can say there is no room at the top at the moment, and I fully understand all these things. Trust me. But I also believe that at times the revolution doesn't necessarily happen on the day there is a vacuum. It starts somewhere. But these people must grow up and trust each other with ideas that I trust his idea, that when something happens in this so-called vacuum we are waiting for, while we are waiting, we're getting stronger. Now, how can we use this platform to wait and get stronger? So I think here, of course, we must talk about some of the challenges that we have. But at an ideological level, we should talk about what happens tomorrow. Not just what's happening today and what has happened in the past. Of course, that's important. And we can copy about what else others have done in the past to cope about tomorrow. Thank you very much. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lux. Shaba, we're going to get the mic. I thought you were 2 for 1 then.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Lutando. Go for it, brother.
Good evening. Tools, the last time I was a journalist when they were launching NetBank, I criticized the leadership of the league. And my own colleagues in the media, they turned against me in 2007. I made a decision that day that I'm not going to belong because aninanyani. You guys are not honest. So we are in an industry where people are not honest. So I made a decision. 6 months later, someone took me. They saved my career. When I was there, and I've been throughout in football, and give you insight, I'm called into a meeting, and they're saying to me, who are you working for? Are you working for the media, or are you working for us? You are giving insight so that people write proper stories, and they go report you, because they get brown envelopes. We need honesty. We need a type of leadership that is ethical and that has got morals at all levels. SAFA, PSL, clubs, and development. Then we're going to move forward. Media as well, let's be honest. Spider, I've been doing a project for Transnet Foundation, where they are looking at starting academies to sports. They call it sports focused schools. Shaba, my first trip was to the Western Cape. I went to Swellendam, that line going to Mossel Bay. Football in South Africa is not compulsory, ladies and gentlemen. Here, in this country, we can meet here, we can talk, we can up South Africa. Not every school plays football. So when we're doing our audit, in the Western Cape, on the schools where I went, they don't, it's only one school that has got a pitch, a proper football pitch. They're sharing, schools are sharing pitches with community, with township. And one teacher was telling me that every time I put poles, I come back the next day, they're gone. This is the situation now when you talk of school football. And school football is what we had that produced the best players in this country. Doggies, Brian, and all other guys, they played school football. But in these schools, in South Africa today, even after the World Cup, football is not compulsory. That's where the problem is. In Tembisa, they built a wall between the school and fields. I don't know what kind of architecture or whatever that is. So which means when you play sport, then you must not be progressive as an academic. You know, so I think there are a lot of things that are impacting on the development of football. And one is because we have few leaders that are ethical, that are moral, and also that are willing to bring solution. And I'm glad that I'm part of the solution, not to fire coaches. Not to fire coaches. So we need to support SAFA's role as custodians of football. The league is not PSL. They are not the custodians of football in this country. They are in business. That's why after 10 games, when they have 30 points, then they say, who are we shipping out? Because they think they're saying we've survived relegation. But who we should hold accountable is SAFA. And the reason that schools in the Western Cape and some of the areas in Jackersfontein, in Free State, they don't have fields, is because SAFA is fighting with the what's the organization? Yes. Why? Who is suffering? It's football. We are not going to go anywhere. So up until we get leaders, because I'm sorry, you are not going to change a lot of the guys that are already at the top, because they've done tremendously well. I mean, who ever thought that we'll have a World Cup here? You know, so what they have done, we should be sitting here and saying, how do we take football to the next level? And the first thing, our first challenge, particularly, and this leadership, is to make football compulsory. If we make football compulsory for each and every school, for each and every township, for each and every community, football is the number one sport as it appears on radio show, where you have people fuming and calling, and they are not aware of what is happening on our schools. So our first challenge is to make football compulsory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shaba, we're going to get to you in a sec. Gentlemen, in terms of what we've taken from the floor, any reflections on what you've heard? Shaba, I'm coming to you next.
Yeah, you know, I hear what Mr. September is talking about, and I'd like to really touch on this issue of the development, and especially at the club level. I came across some information, I think it was 3 years ago, that the league at the time was trying to standardize or grade the academy system to use a concept that was used to turn around Belgian football. And there's a company, I think it was called Double Pass. And when you look at the person who was the CEO of Double Pass at the time, just last year, he was here. He's now the technical director of FIFA, and he visited Kaizer Chiefs, you know. And I had this conversation with him, and he did also confirm that they came very close to working with the league to help them with this Double Pass. And when you look currently, you'll find that as much as we're making a lot of progress, especially since the introduction of the MTC, because KB was now talking about only having one player playing in the PSL, and the bulk of the team was made up of MTC players. And they managed to qualify for the World Cup. So it says there's something that's happening, but it could still be better. So in talking about the solutions that Lux is talking about, the concept, which again goes back to club licensing, the concept of having to make sure that we've got a quality academy that is led by the right people and there's right structures there, that is the way to go. I'm not going to the issue of SAFA and development, but because when you look at it, you can have the top players from the regions. Once they go to the national camp, the scouts from the clubs are there. And those players go to the academies. So if you can make sure that the academies of our clubs are strong and they are well structured and they are also regulated by these club licensing conditions, we can be far.
Okay. Shaba, you still had your thoughts? Or
Yeah, I'm good.
okay, cool. Please stand for us.
I've written notes, man. You're going to mess with my trail of thought. But thank you, everybody, for the opportunity. And before I start referring, I'm going to quote Fidel Castro, who once said, "A revolution can only be led by a person that has strong love for his people. And in the absence of such a quality, that person is not a revolutionary." We are talking football. We are talking the problems that we have in football. In the youth structures, all the way to management. I think it comprises of two sectors. It's the youth structure, moving all the way up to the professional level, but that is driven by the top people, top management. And I think I will just sum up what I would have noted down according to what the comrades would have spoken about. And I hope that I can provide solutions, because we had said that the aim is not to complain, but we must also provide solutions in moving forward. And I think my simplest views will probably go a long way if they make sense. I know I've got a way of getting out of order a little bit, but forgive me for that. One, we spoke of the model to adopt. I think the problem with us, we don't want to take the fundamental things that will take us forward. We are adopting all other nonsensical things. E.g., spray les ground in Mudlala, that spray, the World Cup spray. We are busy with those things. Spray, it's not going to move us anywhere. Overseas, how is football run? What makes it so strong? What makes it so strongly followed by its own people? You have a football club that belongs to the community, it belongs to its people, which is what Brian would have raised there, my senior. I mean, just recently, we would have gone to Holland to visit Serero. Serero is an unnamed. He plays for Vitesse. Vitesse is a team that belongs to the unnamed population. People, they go to the stadiums, they are patriotic about their club, they support it. We moved from there to Kikentoli, who's in Montpellier. It's a club that belongs to the people. From there, we went to Strasbourg to Lebo Mutiba. It's the same concept. Wherever you go, it doesn't matter whether it's Ajax Amsterdam or Feyenoord or anybody, PSG in France. If you are going to go and play with those teams in their backyard, the support that they have from their communities, it's immensely. Now, in South Africa, it's different. I think it's because of all these factors that people support their team locally, the team is sold. It moves elsewhere, then people are left there. But that's part of business. We cannot force club owners to run clubs when they cannot afford to pay their players. Unfortunately, it's part of the game, it's part of football. Now, secondly, we must then look at the issues of the administrators of the game. There is a lot of rot. And we need to eradicate that as a matter of urgency. Because at this point in time, we have people that have money that buy clubs, but they don't have football knowledge. You are not going to run and give the team the necessary direction that it needs to have. Because you are running it sometimes like a small corner shop. E.g., there are clubs, I don't want to mention names and offend people, but there are clubs that play in the PSL, where a team is run from a container. You have two people that are running the office of a professional club. Players are not paid salaries on time. They are out signing on fees and all of that. Yet we want to talk about the Bafana Bafana that will conquer the world. How are we going to have a Bafana Bafana that will conquer Africa and the world at large when we are busy developing a crop of depressed players? We should be employing psychologists more than anything in South Africa. And in fact, that is necessary. Let us look at the lifestyle and all other things that affects these players. Comrades, in Spain, ayikho ichizanyama. Ayikho ichizanyama, akekho DJ Clio, akjive, ayikho leyo nto. South Africa, there are a lot of social ills. These are issues we need to deal with. You are talking about international players that side. Their own recreation form or sort of is going to a mall, go shopping, and they're back at home. They are disciplined. They are getting paid for that, and they've got all the tools to make sure that they sustain their careers. Here we have got kids who are raised from poverty. We have kids who would have sat or slept in a room and heard the screams of their mother being raped next door. There are kids that would have played and they're talented in playing football, who slept in the house, who would have had parents fighting and beating each other up. By extension, it goes to them. These kids are abused, but they are talented. The only place that they call a home, the only place of comfort, is when they play football. Immediately when they leave the field, they are facing a damaged life. Therefore, we criticize and say, so-and-so, so-and-so, they are finished and all of this and that, they don't have the discipline. But did we look to the mental aspect of these things? Did we talk to them about them being professionalized? Because life is difficult. You start earning your salary. You have 20 people on your shoulders that you must start providing for. What does it do to you and the progress of your life? All the things that they need. All clubs must have professional psychologists that is assigned with them. And people that are going to keep the issues of the players confidential so that players can offload and play football. We need clear minds if we want to conquer. It's done overseas. Why don't we adopt those models? Clubs have psychologists that are assigned with them. At the youth level, kids are going through life skill programs so that they grow and understand the transition of moving into fame. Because we've got a problem here. Players play 3 games and all of a sudden their heads are big, you can't tell them anything. And we find them in wrong places. This is where we need the guidance. But that guidance can be implemented if we have people at leadership level who understand exactly what needs to be implemented in this game to make sure that we maintain the healthy minds in this game and move forward. And on another aspect, which is what Lutando spoke about, in terms of honesty and journalism, I think we must not beat about the bush and just be honest about certain things. We have adopted a culture where we are forever in a honeymoon. And this will go to the media, as they would have said. I just want to ride the wave and move quickly on that aspect. In South Africa, football is played. The stories that the media covers and the TV shows where we see football issues being run. You have a situation where clubs would have not paid salaries of players for 7 months. You have a situation where clubs are perpetuating poverty to these players. They are not creditworthiness, they lose their wives, they are kicked out of their homes. For what? They are paying the price for being professional footballers because they have uneducated, angry, and unholistic club owners at that. Now, every time we watch football, Sbugeli spy to some shish. It's happening down there. Who's got the bravery to take that and bring it on the platform and TV, which is a medium that is followed by most of the people, and talk about the pending issues? We don't discuss the pending issues there. So therefore, the fault is also on journalism, where we put people to sleep and they think everything is fine. Not everybody listens to radios, but in TV, that's where you capture most of these people. Let us start and talk about these issues, administrative or otherwise. Talk about these pending issues, sort out those particular issues, because I've got a very serious problem if there are players that would have gone and not been paid for 7 months. In 2019 in South Africa, the richest league in Africa, where we want to be world beaters and conquer, we are having a big party that side, football is collapsing. We have people that would have gone, play a lotto and they win 30 million and they buy status of some sort. After 2 months, they realize that they beat more than they can chew. They start terminating contracts of players and they're chasing away in the streets. Where do we see that on our TV? Where are those pending issues being addressed? The media needs to be honest as well in these issues. If we are talking about sweeping and leveling the playground, that's what's needed. We need a succession plan as well, which is what we talk about. Footballers must not be afraid of going to school. We have a dilemma, comrades. Today we have people that are running football in the country that don't understand what football is. Some have never played it. I mean, a simple example was raised as well on the issue of Mushiner Chukal. Some comrades said, how will the players focus when they are being screamed at and all of that? In fact, that is what is happening in football. We can't allow such things. We allow these European coaches to come here and rubbish us because they are European people. Mushiner Chukal has never played football professionally, for that matter. His emotional state and him being damaged and kicking chairs is his own emotions. He has never married the game. He has never made love to the game or be depressed by the game because of participating in it. So the level of emotional connection and intelligence when it's given to the game, he understands it from a coach's perspective. Players understand it from a player's perspective. It's good that it demands. But this goes to show as well that emotional intelligence is also required when we deal with these things. Everybody from level to level and block to block, they must be capacitated so that they can be able to fulfill and play their role so that we take football to another level. And not this finger pointing. But we need psychologists in this game. We need life skills in this game. We need to deal with issues of financial literacy with our players. We need honest agents who are not there just to take the money and run, who are going to be there and guide these players. We need an agent when Tlantla Shabalala moves from Ajax and he comes to play for Sundowns. Not the guy that comes there to sign the deal and Tlantla Shabalala stays with his friends. He must be the one that looks for apartments and all other things and sort out their comfort so that these boys can focus and play football. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rama. A lot of food for thought there, but a lot of solution-based talk.
Kamza, can I just to add on one thing?
One
Give me
thing,
1
though.
minute.
One thing.
Just give me one
thing.
I just want to talk about Kabelo in terms of the licensing, club licensing. You see, we deal with clubs in a certain level, whether it be your NFD, whether it be your PSL, I will tell you, these things are happening. There's a club that I was even beaten myself. That particular club has got no office. The office is there on paper, but the physical is not there. So players are when they want to speak to the club officials, they meet at the training ground, that's it. It is a serious problem. 2 players have been signed 2 months ago. Signed 30,000 rand a month salary. They only got 10,000. And they are foreign, 2 players. One brought his wife and a kid. One night, the wife and the kid, they were kicked out with him out of their apartment because they wouldn't have paid rental. Till today, they even seen their 30,000 rand a month. They are willing to leave. And this particular club, when we send communication out, what we get back in terms of response is a fax or an email from SPA office. It means this club is run from a SPA office. It is a very big disaster. We are talking reality here. So this is a very serious stuff that we deal with every day. It's quite important. Also, the issue of agents is very important. When we come to a team selection of our national teams, it is a big problem. I think maybe with players wanting to play in Europe, and you might find out that agents have promised their players that I will take you to Europe. One of the requirements to play in the EPL, you need to meet a certain requirement, which becomes a problem to us for our national teams as well. So we also need to find a solution on how we deal with those issues, especially with coaches, because we tend to hire coaches in our national structures who are foreign, and including his team manager and his CEO, they are scared of him. He becomes the boss instead. That's the bigger problem in the country. If our president cannot become a boss to the particular coach who's employed by our national structures, and everyone else is scared of him. We ourselves have met with the president of South African Football Players Union, South African Football Association, about a month ago. We addressed these issues. The very same Bafana that we are talking about today, when they were going to play now, they were unpaid. They were unpaid. How do you deal with the players that are going to qualify you while they are depressed financially? We had to engage and make sure that we reach a certain agreement. 50% was paid before the flight can take off. The very same issue of Banyana. We were sitting with the president in his office. It's things that have been running underground. It is very important. These are real issues that we need to face before we talk about Bafana winning. We must know what's happening deep down there.
Thank you, Tebogo, for those insights. As we see that lots of problems. And to Lux's point, it's about being solutions-based. So I think maybe to wrap things up is to see where do we start and what can, with this type of engagement where you're trying to get the football lover, the football fan to get involved at this level, what can we do? What are the remedies that this group of people can try and influence? If it's not club licensing, if it's not telling SAFA to lead by example, what can be done? What are the solutions?
Yo, Kamza,
good luck.
I mean, if you listened to the discussions here, you can clearly tell that we have a lot of problems in our football. I think we heard about the Germans, how they collapsed at the UEFA, and then they dismantled their structures and came up with a 10-year plan. We've been having these problems, heaven knows for how long. We don't seem to have solutions.
Is that a problem where we don't have people who hold forth with a direction? And at the first sign of failure, we change things up.
Precisely. As an example, let's be honest. We have SAFA. They have an acting CEO. We have the PSL. They have an acting CEO. Those are some of the problems that are bedeviling our football. It's not just one small problem. They are just too many for us. And unless we get people who will say, okay, from now on, for the next 10 years, this is how all, and heaven knows, all of us here, we know how many indabas we've held in the past. And those indabas, what have they yielded? Nothing. And problems keep mounting and mounting. It's so tragic to hear that, I mean, players have, in this age, we pride ourselves in running a commercially successful league in Africa. But when you hear that there are players that have not been paid for 7 months, it breaks your heart. How do you expect those players to perform to their maximum if they haven't been paid? There are just so many problems that it scares me. But I'm glad we've started a discussion of this nature. You know, maybe through more discussions like this, solutions might come up. That is the only thing I can say at this moment. We cannot put very poor countries across the continent are able to put a professional women league. We can't organize it. And you know why? Because we have 9 regions, and the Sasol League, they are saying they will have the winners of the 9 regions. And then they will have 2 winners from the universities. And then Mamelodi Sundowns, because they have a women team, and Bloemfontein Celtic, because they also have a women team, will automatically qualify. And then they will Gutkanga Madolo and pray that maybe Orlando Pirates and Chiefs and maybe another team from the PSL can form a women league and then affiliate, and then the professional. You understand the kind of problems that we have. So there are just too many. And as I said, I'm glad this forum has started, and let's keep talking. Hopefully we will come with better solutions. We cannot find a solution overnight, that I can guarantee you. But as we talk and as we express, or rather carve out the problems and the challenges that we face, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to come up with solutions. But right now, it's depressing, believe me, very depressing.
Well, where do we start? I think as time goes on and we will be zoning in on the different aspects of the game, say if next time we're talking more about technical matters, that's when we can really start to talk about what solutions do we want, you know, because I think basically what I'm sensing today is that there are a lot of things, you know, different people in the game that they've always bottled these things inside, and, you know, and as someone who's also covering the game, you know, we're aware about these things, but no, it's on. In as much as I cannot separate you from being an administrator, you cannot separate me from being a journalist. You know, in fact, this past weekend, I understand that there was an issue about us journalists not having accompanied the national team. You know, and the way it's coming out, it's as if journalists are neglecting the national team. The reality that we have now comes is that in my office currently there's 11 of us. But next week there'll only be 4 of us. Our contracts are coming to an end this week. And they're only going to retain 4 of us from 11. You know? And we know about how many media houses have been going through retrenchments. You know? And these are the realities. Because we're also a stakeholder in the game. You know? And I'm listening here to all these concerns about, but also it's a tough environment. And this now talks to how us as sports journalists, football in particular, maybe there's a change of tact, you know, a different strategy on how we cover the game that we love. Teacake here earlier on, he was talking about how him and Mark Listen used to cover the game back in the days, and they've been an inspiration to us, you know, on how they're covering the game on the continent, you know. So going forward with our team, even now having qualified for the AFCON, it means that if my company cannot take me there, how do we even beg some of the commercial sponsors, you know, the corporate people who are here to go forward? Because I felt that I needed to address this, because it was coming across now as if journalists are neglecting the national team. Because the package to go there was 40,000 rands. And the media houses cannot afford, you know. So in looking forward to the solutions, I can say that I believe that this is the right platform. As we go forward, we will have sessions where we'll zone in on different areas of the game, but I still maintain that this man's club licensing is the solution.
Well, there you go. Speaking of that, man, Gabriel, I'll let you have the final word. Yes, sir.
BBK and I are a little bit darker, so you can't see us from this side, guys.
Oh, yeah. It's Ben's sizable head.
Okay, that's fine. So I mean, I'm sure one thing that I'm just going to cover has been some of the sentiments that has been covered here. So I mean, what I want to say is that we've been saying that football is a business. So I think it's high time that we start treating football as a business. I can make a typical example. I mean, each and every company, for instance, will have board of directors. Say, for instance, a person that sits on a financial committee will have served maybe as a CEO or maybe as a chief financial officer of a company for about 10 years or 15 years. As it stands, maybe within our national federation, which is SAFA, you'll find that somebody that sits on a financial committee perhaps is somebody who's used to, he was a traffic officer or anything like that. So, I mean, it's high time we start treating football as a business, because that's what we're saying. I can make a typical example. I mean, we're paying maybe a national team coach, say about 900,000. It's a reported salary of about 900,000 a month. There's nothing wrong in poaching maybe Putuma Nhleko, who's a former maybe CEO of MTN, and saying, you know what, we've got a problem administratively as SAFA. Why are you not coming through? I mean, you've been involved with football from a commercial point of view during 2010 as a sponsor. How about you come through and sort of like maybe translate whatever management, you know, capabilities that you have and translate that into football? Because I believe if we've got right structures and right management, we can then deliver that into the field of play. There's a book that I was just reading. I think it's called From Locker Room to Boardroom. It speaks about the transition from rugby players that used to play rugby, then moving on to, you know, management roles and all of that. So I think it's high time also, I'm challenging Asote Bokho is here from a players union you know, perspective. I'm challenging Tebogo to educate as much players as possible. We're tired of just having players as analysts on TV, having players as just, you know, ambassadors of corporates. We've got a CEO of Varsity Sports who's a former rugby player. But if we look at football, we can't actually see such kind of players. So up until that, all of that have been addressed, we're going to have a whole lot of problems. A lot of corporates are actually coming into football, but I think as they come into football, maybe some of their objectives might be wrong. I mean, I'm sure around during 2010, these guys, when they come into football, there was something, I mean, from FNB, for instance. You'll have FNB that's involved during the World Cup, and you'll have one of the chief marketing officers that is roped into a local organizing committee. So I think it's maybe high time that when maybe ABSA is involved within the ABSA Premiership, they then take in a person from ABSA to say that, you know what, this is how we do things in a corporate, and this is how we deliver results. Because, I mean, we're just tired of having a CEO who's a former school principal who's used to managing just a 1 million budget at the primary school, and now he's now faced with suffer with a 40 million budget. So I think that's just that. With regards to maybe development of football, I would want to have a session that's different, whereby I'll have as many coaches as possible. I saw coaches here, so I would want to see as many coaches as possible, so that at least we also touch on those aspects. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, my brother. Yeah, I tend to agree. BBK?
I was also being very selfish because I saw it was not going to come this way. Sanbonan, I would like to applaud you guys for starting an initiative like this, and I'm happy to see a few women faces here, and I was hoping there would be more, but because the journey is beginning now, I think as the train reaches many platforms, we shall be able to get there. A lot of great remarks has been made by several people here, but there seems to be a common thread. There seems to be a common thread that is developing, which says there is an us and them kind of situation which permeates not only football, but the society of South Africa. Before I can do anything, I need to find faults with Trompis. Before Trompis can say anything, he needs to point the finger at what is happening in his former industry that he worked in. You know, and before Africans can come together to find solutions to issues, they tend to point problems first, like what Lux was saying earlier on. Before anything can happen, Brian has to tell us that what is happening for former players at the clubs. Before Bafana play a game against Libya, Mr. Munyaye is telling us that there was a strike and all those things. And the reason I'm coming to that, and I'm not by any means defending the media, my industry is not honest. He is saying that the only challenge I'm having with that, Munyaye, Brian, Trompis, if you know of journalists who are taking bribes, and you keep quiet with my brother and you come and talk here, you are complicit in that thing. It is like a woman who knows that her brother, the uncle, abuses the child at home, but they're going to keep quiet about it because the brother is going to do what? He's going to bring the groceries. I am challenging you. You left journalism. In my mind, to my eyes, you will always be a journalist. Matlomula will always be a journalist. Dominic Shim-Abu will always be a journalist. I am challenging you to do the right thing, to help rid out this noble craft of journalism, of these bad potatoes that you're telling us here about. It is upon you to clean up. Mr. Munyaye, we are here, at least if I speak for myself, I am here to serve. I am not here to be some, I almost use an F word, a messed up celebrity or anything like that. I am not here for anything. I am here to write. I love writing. Words are wonderful. I paint beautiful pictures with words, and I don't think that everybody's going to agree with what I write. Likewise, not everybody's going to disagree with what I write. As a columnist, if I'm able to start a discussion, a conversation amongst people, as that old topi taught me there, Teacake, who I'm very proud to name as a mentor for me, because I don't think that a PBK will be standing here had he not played a small role in my part. I want us to be able to do that. Tulan, I want you to embrace the fact that the stage is now for young talent, youthful exuberance to come through with the ideas that we have. You've got your Penges there, you've got your Mazolas there, they are the generation that come after us like we came after Teacake. But you cannot discard those old men. You must say to them, what do we take from them? I understand exactly where those sentiments are coming from you, but this is where we must be wise and show emotional intelligence and refuse to let the personal impact on a broader thing. What I'm asking you, my brothers and sisters, is that for a long time, Senzo Mazingis, we've had a situation where before anything can happen, we think Uguti, those who lack melanin must be the drivers of the process, and without their presence, things are not going to move. Think about it. Think about the movies that you watch. For every black hero to emerge, there has to be some kind of a white messiah. Even a movie talking about the life of a struggle stalwart like Steve Biko. Huh? Donald Woods always emerges in the shadows as without him, Biko would not have. And it is a lie. It is a lie. I digress. So my contribution to this thing is one. Solutions. Like September speaks about solutions. Kabelo talks about club licensing. Germany that he's talking about had Abo Luther Matthäus, Jürgen Klinsmann, help me, Andre Bremer, Stefan Effenberg, and all these people. They were long in the tooth. They were long. They had won the World Cup in 1990 as West Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall. They didn't have issues about East Germany, West Germany, but they didn't get along, by the way. One capitalism, one. You know your history, you know? Now, what happens is they are able to sit down and say, we failed for all these years. Something is wrong. What's a one? What they are going to do now is, let us investigate. It's not deep investigation. These players are not going to be around for the next cycle of 4 years for the World Cup. So, club licensing kicks in. It kicks in the form of all the clubs are going to have the youth structures. My brother here, sorry, I forgot your name. I know I follow you on Twitter. You forgot. See, Hoffenheim, you both agree. You've been there. We travel. We've seen those kind of things. PSL delegations have been there. They've come back. What has happened? I'm sorry, Lax is not here. But the issue is, how was the come, Mr. Come, bro. I don't want you to say you were outside, man. Now, the issue is, when all this happens, they are saying, you are going to have these youth teams. They are all going to be taking an intake of German players because we are addressing a German problem and it's going to come with a German solution. They are all going to play. They are all going to play. It is a 10-year plan. And during that 10-year plan, they invite England to come and play them. Friendly match. Hey, those Germans were beaten black and blue, 5-1. 5-1. If their plan was a knee-jerk reaction, a half-hearted attempt, promise you on my father's grave, they would have abandoned it. They would have scrapped it, but it gave them resolve to continue even more, Brian. Even more. The results of that, forget what happened here in 2010. The results were there for everybody to see in Brazil, and they took home the trophy. I won't belong with Spain. 2008, Euro. 2010, World Cup. 2012, Euro. Right? All those things, those two teams were forces in the Champions League. Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, final. Real Madrid, Barcelona, final. Where do you get the bulk of those two teams? The national teams, they come from those teams. Then the Torres, maybe from our club, Liverpool, to add some spicing in for Spain. We understand. But I'm saying that we then want to do the same thing. Where do France get their team, the national team? It is Clairefontaine. Clairefontaine, it is a national academy of France. Benny McCarthy comes up against Thierry Henry. He's not scared of him, not because he's got crack from, Hanover Park. No, because he knows him. They played in Malaysia in the under-20s. He played against him. He knows what he can bring as a threat to our team. We understand. Danny Jordan knows this. All SAFA people, they know this. They go on these fact-finding missions and whatever. You do not know whether they find facts or they find anything at all. Because if it is there, you bring it back. And you don't have to take it cut and dry. You take that which works and bring it here and apply it to the conditions that work here for you to be able to achieve something. Solution. I don't know how many ministers of higher education and basic education and sport ministers have been in charge of these portfolios in my time as a journalist, and all of them have said the same thing. I think there's a prepared speech that they all dust off and they say it and then they go. We must start school sports. This must work with this, and then we will be able. Somebody spoke of Dr. Kumar. Where did he come from? Filming was discovered in the mines there. Jomo told you how skinny he was and all those things, but he was playing at a school against Dr. Kumar.
and they grow, and they were playing in the PSL. These youngsters who were playing in the World Cup under 17 and all of that, where are they playing in the PSL? Where are they? Where are they? So yes, clubs are businesses. But TK, you're making a very good point. It is the only country in the world where the league is telling the association what to do. It is the only country in the world, and that is not normal. It is an abnormality. So in saying all the things that we are saying, let us move from a point of saying, the revolution, comrade, the revolution, it's going to start because we've identified the problem. And it's going to be activated because we say, what is the solution to this problem? Having diagnosed everything that is the symptom of us not being able to go forward. You can't say you are going to breathe life in this patient when you don't have oxygen because of lead shedding. And you know, it's a domino effect. See, now we want to build the house, Bafana Bafana. Yeah? There's no foundation. It's a quicksand. That house is not going to stand. Only a magician can build the house starting with the roof, and then the walls, and then the foundation. It is the other way around. It is the inverted pyramid. My sense to you is that I hope this thing is not going to end here today, and then next week we're going to be 15, and then afterwards the energy is gone. Lastly, I'll rather save 40,000 rand sending someone to Tunisia in order for me to be able to send someone to a whole tournament. Save for one match in order to save for a possible 3 matches or 7 matches if Bafana goes all the way to the final. It is a difficult economic times. We are not immune. We are not immune. If that saving 40,000 is going to keep someone in a job for a month or 2, and I have any influence into that, I would rather save the 40,000. And don't make a mistake, my friend. When you were a journalist, Bafana were not as rubbish as they are now. Yes, the downslide has been going on forever. The money was there. There was a Sunday Times, the World Cup 2006. We didn't even qualify. There were 2 journalists. We did not even qualify. You know, when context, and the points we make, context, perspective, very important. And I'm not saying that you were just, you know, you're saying the things you're saying because you feel. And it's not an attack. I appreciate you because I see you, and I've seen you, and I will continue to see you. And this engagement must be as brutally honest as now it is happening. And if it means people are not going to speak to you, welcome aboard, my friend. Yeah? You'll write a column questioning, why is this club's game being postponed and this one is not being postponed? You get a phone call for 9 minutes, 41 seconds. You're putting it like this, like it's like on speakerphone. People are swearing at you. It's part of the trade. I met Thomas Konait, he was in hiding. Ladies and gentlemen, in Durban. They wanted to kill him because he had written a story that shook the foundations of football in this country. Google it, you will find it. I blew his cover, and I said to him, hey, man. And I asked, when I come to the Sunday Times, I want you to be my mentor. He looks at me and he says, hey, can you tap bullet? Gary, hey, you see the Chesterville Township? I'm from there. I love you people. We love our football. We are going to take it forward or contribute, however small, in taking it forward by acknowledging our legacy, identifying the problems, collectively embracing them, and then challenge ourselves as to how we're going to go forward. Sorry, Brian.
Thank you, BBK. Gawelo, top that.
I second everything he says.
I wouldn't.
No, but
I thought Shava had cleaned the floor, but now I'm not too sure anymore.
Yeah, no. I wholeheartedly agree with all the sentiments he just said, and I think that encapsulates everything. And I always say, sport is a mirror image of society. We can't separate sport from what's happening in society. The ills that are happening in society are definitely going to be happening in sports. So we can't try and fix problems in sports that are still happening in society. And like he mentioned, there are a lot of ills that are happening, and we try and get players to detract from those ills and then become machines and not, become immune to those. So we always got to understand that at the end of the day is that whatever's happening in sports is happening in society. So we've got to try as a collective to fix what's happening within our society. In that way, sport can become better in this country. And I think for me, like what everyone has said, so we need to be solutions-based, solutions-driven. And I think in this country, like I said before, it's a mirror image. We're all waiting to be hired. Why are we waiting to be hired by a club? There's so many things in football that, we're pushing entrepreneurship. We should be pushing businesses through football that can assist football with its solutions. Right now, I was talking to other people. There's a ticketing system. There's a ticketing problem in this country. We have CompuTicket, who's the only people that have a monopoly in selling tickets. And if a CompuTicket closes at 6 o'clock, you can't get a ticket. But everybody has a cell phone. How do we not come up with a solution where someone can buy a ticket for a PSL game on a cell phone? We're not coming up with solutions like that can assist the game. So I think we need to become footballpreneurs, where we come up with solutions in how do we fix the game using whatever industry you're in or whatever your interests are, but what can you come up with that can assist to helping those solutions? Because slowly but surely, once we all start fixing these little problems, collectively we'll start seeing, because there's some problems that we can't fix sitting here. We can't fix, or we can't influence, or we can't, but there's certain things that we can do within our own sphere. So let's look at those things and make sure how can I assist football with what I know and with the people I know that can come up with solutions. And I think in that way, that drive will start kind of creating a culture, a new culture, and creating new jobs, new businesses. Now you don't have to work. You now can start making money off this industry, because we're all looking at the same pot. And the same pot is someone must pay me. I must be hired by someone. And it can't be. We can't think that way. If we're pushing entrepreneurship on the side, we must push it within football as well.
I agree. Well said, Gabelo. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess to sum it all up, guys, I guess we've gone through a lot of topics here this evening, but it would seem that it is a concerted team effort, one that requires the league to maybe humble itself in a way where it takes best practice and learnings from people who professionalize their systems and look to work towards merit and a goal that is goal-driven and results-based. We don't see that often enough, and I guess that's probably our first challenge as this structure, is to say, okay, cool, how are we results-based? How do we get something out of this? How do we influence our own sphere and the greater goodness? Because also, I guess it is very important at the end of the day to have football-loving people be in football. I don't think we see enough of that. I think there's a lot of people from the outside who have other agendas and other reasons for being involved, and I think it's about high time that that disconnect of the us and them gets disconnected, actually, and it does become a thing where people who love football and actually care about its well-being are the ones most involved in it. And this is the first positive step, and I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to you, the biggest stakeholder in this, and of course also to my panel, TK, Veli, Gabelo. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. You can give each other a round of applause. And I think so for myself and the Front Runner football team, what we'll do is obviously try to make sure that we gather everything that's happened here tonight. It doesn't die tonight. Find other platforms for it to live on. And maybe another way for us to engage with all the ideas that have come out of tonight to make sure that we keep the embers alive. Nothing dies. Nothing goes to the wayside. As far as also making sure we connect all the commercial, all the people behind the players like the union, the media, all the people involved in football to find a common place to connect and maybe unbundle and build up these ideas so they're stronger, and we work towards a goal where we're not unbundling after a year of no success, having our resolve to keep at it and build something that is sustainable for the long term. That's what our plan is, and we hope to take you along for the ride. So thank you so much to everybody who's come out tonight, for myself, Gamza, and the team that made this possible. I'd like to say thank you to Limar, who helped us with our PR, and also to some of the commercial guys who popped in this evening to see what we're about. Hopefully we can lean on each other moving forward and make this a bigger and better proposition for everybody around the country. Thank you.